Oh, he was totally in love with Frances. Reggie loved her. He knew that she was the one.
Growing up in the East End of London, Frances Shea seemed destined for an ordinary life. But in 1959, at the age of 16, she met Reggie Kray, charming, confident, and already building a reputation on the streets. Reggie quickly swept Frances off her feet.
A hairdresser came to her house. A manicurist came. Shoes were delivered to her to pick. Didn't want her to go shopping. So it's like a bird in a cage. That's how I saw her.
This is Matt from Underworld Uncut, and this week we're delving into the tragic story of Frances Kray. Joining us is Maureen Flanagan, Violet Kray's former hairdresser, who went on to become a close and lifelong friend of the Kray family. I was keen to know Maureen's first memories of meeting Frances.
Frances I met probably on my third visit to Mrs. Kray. The very, very pretty girl came in with this dark auburn hair. I thought she was very timid, very nervous, and had gloves on that she took off and put on even while she was talking to you. And then Violet said, "This is Reggie's girl, Frances." Oh, I said, "I'd love to put your hair up." She had flick-up hair, like we all had in those days. "Let me put your hair up." She said, "All right, one day I will." Did her a pleat and a bun, and she went, "Oh no, Reggie won't like that. It makes me look older." To which I got this feeling that he liked this immature, timid, vulnerable, very, very young girl, very naive, really. Though she was an East End girl, she probably had only had one little boyfriend before him.
But their relationship was never just the two of them. There was always Ronnie Kray to contend with.
He really didn't like Frances, or anybody really that got close to his twin, except Violet. He was frightened that they'd go and live somewhere. He wouldn't be involved in the business. He wouldn't be able to go and threaten people and fight people alongside him anymore.
Maureen saw firsthand the impact Ronnie had on the relationship between Frances and Reggie.
One time she came in with him and all happy. I thought, God, I've never seen her smile much in the last 3 or 4 visits. And she said, "We're going to the cinema tonight," she said to Violet, all starry-eyed and in love. And he sat there, and I thought he looked a bit morose. And all of a sudden the door opened and she said, "We're going to the cinema tonight, Ron." He said, "No, you're not." He said, "When you're not going to any cinema." He said, "We've got business to do. We're going to meet some people, do some business, and then we're going on to the club." And you could see the life just go out of this little teenager, who had looked forward possibly one of very, very few dates where she could be alone with him. Because obviously she went to clubs and nightclubs and just sat around listening to people sing and smoke and drink. It wasn't her sort of life, but she was with Reggie. And she just sat there and he said, "I'll be back." And it was the little voice that said, "How long will you be, Reg? And will you be back at 10:30? Thinking, well, I'm not going to the cinema. I'll sit here with your mother and me, trying to make her laugh and all that. 10:30, knock came at the door. She said, here he is. And there was Ronnie Bender standing there, who'd been sent to pick her up and take her home. And she, it was, "Where's Reg? Why hasn't he come for me?" Tearful. And then you have Violet, being the mother, give her a little cuddle. "Well, they have to go out and earn their money. If they don't go to their clubs and be seen, they don't earn anything. And then you won't have the lovely things that you've got." The little face, and off she'd be taken home. And this happened time and time and time again.
I wondered whether Maureen felt that Reggie was sincere in his love for Frances.
Oh, he was totally in love with Frances. Reggie loved her. Reggie wanted to get out of that life once he'd met Frances, because I think she was his point of saying, "This is normal. I want to be a boyfriend. I want to kiss and cuddle my girlfriend. I want to bring her in the club." Of course, when he bought her in the club, Ronnie started. "What's she doing here? Be quiet. She's here because she's with me." And he danced with her. He went to Tottenham Court Road dancing school to learn how to dance. Yeah, and he didn't tell Ronnie that. Somebody told Ronnie that they'd driven him there and just let it out of the bag. And he's, "What are you going dancing for?" "Oh my God, you're learning to dance." This was all chiding, to make him shout and scream, but he kept it together because he knew Frances was the one who he wanted to marry, and he thought she was his reason to get away from that life, away from Ronnie, let him go and do what he wanted to do. He knew what condition his mental health was. He knew he couldn't go on and on like he was, but he wanted to get married, and as soon as he told Ronnie that he was going to get married, all hell broke loose. He was always saying sarcastic things around the house to her, and Violet would say, "Oh, Ronnie, don't say things like that. Leave her alone." But Reggie would always defend her because he loved her, or he'd take her out and, "Come on, we're going for a walk, we're going for a little ride, or we're going to Victoria Park, we'll have a little walk around." Then you'd get the voice, "Oh, go on, go for your little walks. Oh, you're holding hands and kissing." And Reggie would just keep walking. Really would love to have turned around and hit him, probably, but he's with Frances, so that's got to be kept nice.
As Maureen grew closer to the family, I wondered whether Violet had ever confided in her about her feelings towards Frances.
Violet loved her right from the very beginning when he brought her home, because she wasn't loud, she wasn't flash, she was very, very pretty, very lovely. Shy, which would be all the things that Violet Kray would like. She wouldn't like anybody loud, who swore, who dressed dreadfully. But she always said, "I don't know if she can be a good wife, Maureen." I should say, "Why?" "Well, she can't cook. She can't even make a cup of tea. And she's too timid." And I said, "Well, Reggie doesn't want a loud, forceful girl." And she said, "No, but I don't think that she can deal with his way of life." And she knew that Reggie really, really loved her from the first minute he saw her, because he was friends with her brother and would see her around, but as a schoolgirl. I mean, I think he first saw her when she was 15, 16, still at school. And when she came home, and this was the new girlfriend, this was the princess, and that's how she was treated. Anybody that their sons brought home, whether they were male or female, were treated well in Mrs. Kray's house. Most welcoming lady. She went down Bethnal Green Road with her, shopping with her, took her out. She was given some money by Reggie to buy dresses. And then she wanted to go to work. That was the worst thing she could have ever said, because he did not want her to be anywhere where there was either an influence or male attention. And I assure you she would have had lots of male attention. Very, very pretty.
Despite the growing cracks in their relationship, Frances and Reggie finally married in 1965. To many, it looked like a fairy tale ending. In reality, it was the beginning of a tragedy. Behind the glamour and celebrity of the Kray name, Frances was already struggling with a life she'd never truly chosen. Maureen was at Valence Road on the morning of the wedding.
I was there in the house in the morning because I had to go and do Mrs. Kray's hair. Terrible atmosphere in the house. You walked in and you thought, this is not a house that's going to see a lovely wedding for one of these sons. They've got all the money in the world, they can afford anything, they've got the Rolls Royces outside. Why is this atmosphere? And then you found out why. There's Ronnie walking about, "Well, I'm not going. Well, I'm not going to the wedding. I don't know what the wedding's about. What do you want to get married?" Imagine saying this to a bridegroom who's standing there, nervous as he is, and he was nervous, Reggie, and he looked lovely. And I thought, she's saying, "Ronnie, stop it. Don't be talking to him like that." "Well, it's true, isn't it? What's he want to get married for?" And shudder the thought of Frances, who was going to look gorgeous, obviously. There's the old man walking upstairs and up and down, doesn't like the tie. A terrible, terrible atmosphere. All the cars outside. The crowd in Valence Road had all gathered around there at the time. So I looked out the window, I thought, well, they usually go to the bride's house, don't they? To see the bride coming out first, to see her in her wedding dress, whether she's got the veil down or back, whatever. But this time they're at the bridegroom's house because obviously they're the Krays. But the crowd all cheering when he came out, and then he decided, no, I don't want to go in the Rolls Royce. I'm going to walk to the church. So he's walked up Valence Road to the church.
As crowds gathered outside St James the Great Church in Bethnal Green, the scale of the occasion quickly became apparent.
I'm with Mrs. Kray. I'm thinking, oh, my God, are we ever going to get in this church? And are we going to have this ceremony. Something's going to happen. And it nearly did. When we arrived, the crowds outside the thing, like as though, I don't know, Elvis was coming. The crowds outside, and I've been to a lot of weddings. It was unbelievable. I've never seen so many people. But they come from everywhere in the East End. And they're all outside. And they've gone in the church. He sat down, Ronnie. And I thought, oh, I've got to say something, because nobody else will. I said, Ronnie, you've got to stand up there with Reggie. What for? Because you're the best man. And I looked at Charlie as much as say, help me. You've got to stand up there. No, I'll sit here till she arrives. And that sneer, she arrives, you know. And then I looked at Reggie and went, and he's gone, stand up. Anyway, eventually he got up and they stood there. And I don't know who was the most nervous. But I think Ronnie was angry. I thought, good job we're in a church and not a pub. Anyway, she arrived and you heard the cheer go up there, and she's got the gorgeous brother. They was as good looking as each other. You might have thought they were twins because they were lovely, the two of them. He was a good looking boy who Reggie obviously fancied. I assure you of that. And she was good looking. And they came in and then the hymns start and nobody's singing because everyone can notice the atmosphere. Because remember, the priest who they wanted to marry them, Father Hetherington, he'd refused to marry them. And Reggie, can you imagine, if he'd have been a publican, why can't you marry me? And Mrs. Kray told me, he said, well, I just don't think it's going to work. And I don't think the two of you are serious. And I think that you're going to harm each other. Imagine a priest saying this to a would-be bridegroom. And Reggie said, well, I respect your opinion, but we support your church. I've done lots of charities and given you money. You've been in court and stood up and give us good references, how generous we are to the public and to the community. No, he said, no, I'm not going to do it, Red. So they had to have this young priest. Well, the young priest had obviously knew them and been told. He was nervous, Reggie was nervous, and Ronnie was that looking at the congregation. Now, Albert Donahue told me he'd already been told, watch outside the church. Anybody gets noisy or boisterous, tell them to go. He'd already been told this by Ronnie. And this is a wedding. And then this hymn starts and we start to sing. And they don't sing. Just about 6 guys are trying to look at a thing and sing some songs. Well, I thought, this is it. This wedding, I knew it. It's not going to take place. She's looked round like that as much as to say to her people, who were very few, I assure you, on that side, like, sing.
What happened next was entirely in keeping with Ronnie Kray and entirely out of place in a church.
He came away from Reggie and he walked up the aisle in the middle of the church. Sing, F you, sing loud in that voice and those eyes. And they all looked at their piece of little card, you know, that you get in a church. And they all started singing. And the men didn't know the hymns. Some of them have never seen the inside of a church except the day maybe they got married. And they're looking at this piece of paper and singing, Lord Almighty. Because have you ever known a man to walk up an aisle of a church but swear?
Adding an unexpected touch of glamour, the wedding was photographed by David Bailey. It was the height of swinging London, blurring the line between East End notoriety and high society style.
The photos tell you everything. Reggie looks like caught in the headlights. He's terrified. You know, she looked like looking with her big eyes like that because they went to the hotel in Finsbury Park for the reception. And the only one smiling in the wedding pictures is Violet Kray, being all happy. The bride looked lovely and her new daughter-in-law and her son's getting married. And out on the steps of the church, she's standing there with Reggie and David Bailey shouted out, Ronnie, get in the picture. He's getting the picture. And then David Bailey said, and now both kiss the bride on the cheek. And there's a picture of the two of them kissing her. But the wedding pictures, I mean, the couple of the guests are smiling, but the bride just looks like really lost, controlled really, tense. You know, brides are always laughing on there because they want to look nice in the picture. pictures, but she wasn't laughing in any of those wedding pictures. Terrible pictures of a wedding, because it wasn't a happy wedding.
Frances and Reggie travelled to Greece for their honeymoon. Against the backdrop of ancient ruins and bright Mediterranean skies, it should have been a new beginning for the couple. But even in those early days of marriage, something wasn't right.
They went away to Athens on the honeymoon. There's pictures of on the honeymoon. They're standing there and she's got a cardigan hanging over her arm and she's looking at him, away from him, looking at him frowning like that. And they've obviously had a row. And she's come back and told me and Violet, and Charlie, she told, he hasn't laid a finger on me for the whole of the honeymoon. She told us that in the kitchen, I thought. She was talking about they've been kissing and cuddling for 4 years in cars and on doorsteps or wherever, not her doorstep, but wherever, and in clubs, you get a little peck and a little cuddle. What are you talking about? She went, no, he didn't. So then Violet's turned around and said, it'll all come right. It's just nerves. Well, I don't know a bridegroom. I've known a bride, hated the wedding night, especially if she was a virgin, but not a bridegroom. But it didn't happen. In the hotel, she told us, she got ready to go to dinner into a lovely restaurant, wherever they found. They ate the dinner, they drank the wine. By 8:30 each night, she was back in the hotel. And he said, you know, I'm going gambling with those 2 Greek guys we were talking to. She went, but can't I come? It's only a club. No, you can't come. They don't allow women in these clubs. Well, they did, but she doesn't know what they allow in Greece, does she? So when you do that for a couple of nights, all right. But when it goes on for the whole of the honeymoon, there is something wrong. And they were there 2 weeks.
Without the experience of a happy honeymoon to look back on, Frances and Reggie returned to the East End and began their life as a married couple.
I think she thought, let's get back and let's live in our little flat. And maybe that would be, it'll all come right, as Mrs. Kray had told her it would come right. And she probably told her mother, and her mother was probably pleased because she didn't want them to be married in the first place. But it didn't ever come right. And I think it's because, not on her part, I don't think, because she told me she loved him. She told me she loved Reggie and how good he was to her. It was on his part, definitely.
Of course, responsibility for the couple's unhappiness did not rest with Reggie alone.
If it was down to Ronnie Kray, the marriage would never have taken place because all he was seeing was somebody was taking his twin away from him. The marriage did take place, much to Ronnie's upset. And then it just, from then onwards, just went downhill. The nights out, you know, the absence from the home. They moved 3 times. She left twice and went back to live with her mother and father. Then came back. He went and wooed her again, said he was taking her on a holiday. They went on a holiday. They came back and it started again. You know, when you're in a nightclub from sort of 10, 11 o'clock at night and don't come home till 5, you're drunk. So that, again, was that because she didn't drink. So you now got this older, drunken husband that was this marvellous boyfriend who loved and adored you and bought you all these dresses and jewellery and everything. All of a sudden comes in at 5 o'clock and doesn't want to even talk to you at 5 o'clock and you're drunk in the morning. But that made Ronnie Kray very happy. Any argument between them was always, he'd come into the kitchen and say, oh, Reggie's had a row with Frances again. Oh, so what? What does he want her for? What does he want these silly girls for? He's got me, he's got you, Mum, and he's got a wonderful business. Why does he want to go with girls? They only want 2 things, money and they want to change you. And she used to look at me, Violet, and go, all right, soothe him down, give him his cup of tea and his clean shirt, and off they'd go.
It became something of an open secret in London's underworld that Reggie never consummated his marriage with Frances.
And then from then onwards, he's like made her into a sort of a Madonna figure, as though she's untouchable and on a pedestal. And he's confided in to Albert Donahue, who told me and Charlie Kray, he asked me, how do you excite a woman? And Albert Donahue has said this on documentaries. And I said, well, just relax, Reg, you know, it'll come. No, I've been with other girls, but I can't be Frances. Frances told me out of her own mouth, sitting with Violet. And even when she'd gone, Violet would say, it'll all come right. he's just nervous. Because he's had girlfriends, you know, but it's different with this one. And it was an excuse, wasn't it?
No one really knows the reality, but the theories were there.
Could have been a little bit of the bisexual part coming out in him. But I just think that to him, she was untouchable. Anything regarding sexual or undressing in front of him, I think he just could not do it. He just could not do the sexual act with Frances. He put her on a pedestal. No one could swear or shout or do anything in front of her. She couldn't go shopping. Things were delivered. She couldn't go out. She couldn't talk to other men. In clubs with them, she just sat quietly like that. He's laughing and talking and doing his thing round the tables, and Ronnie too. Then they'd come and sit for a couple of minutes. Then they'd, oh, hello, Reg. Oh, I've got to go and talk to this one. And off he'd go. So she was quite isolated, and I think this brought the depression on worse than ever. And I think that was a world that she wanted out of.
I wonder whether this is the moment where things really start to unravel. Reggie made a choice that, with hindsight, seems almost destined to drive a wedge between him and Frances.
Ronnie went and got himself a flat in Sedgwick Court, where he had all these mad parties with his young boys and a couple of MPs. What did Reggie do? Go and take the flat underneath. Could you do it? Could you do it? Because it meant that he'd have his dinner with her, right? And then he'd say, I'm going upstairs to see Ronnie, but he never came back. Like, you'd go up, maybe have a drink with your brother, see a couple of friends, oh, hello, got to go downstairs because of the wife. He never came back till 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, but she's had to be there listening to that going on, and there were a few orgies, I assure you, there. Lots of young boys, and women, but mostly boys. They had fun, the music was playing. She's had to lay there and listen to that 2 or 3. And when he came in, you see, he was drunk. Been drinking since about 9 o'clock. So he was well drunk. You just go to bed. There wasn't any sexual encounters.
Over time, Maureen saw Frances more often, and with each passing visit, there was a noticeable change in her.
I thought she looked sadder and sadder. It was just a disintegration of her life with him. And I thought, you know, this can't go on. This started off as a wonderful love affair. I know there was a difference in the age, but it didn't seem to matter, because she obviously liked the experienced man who took her to nightclubs and dressed her up, and she was sitting with all these glamorous people. She met film stars, all famous boxers. She met pop stars. And she's sitting like a princess in a palace. And then all of a sudden, he can't take you to these places, or you might go once a month. You're not allowed to go and buy a dress because 12 dresses were delivered to her on a rail. You pick what you like. If you want 12, take 12. If you want 2, take 2. A hairdresser came to her house. A manicurist came. Shoes were delivered to her to pick. Didn't want her to go shopping. So it's like a bird in a cage. That's how I saw her. But the love was still there. Every row they had, the next day he'd be round the mothers, calling up the window, couldn't go in, wasn't allowed in, because they just really, really disliked him. But then she'd go round to Violet and say, Violet, you know, what can I do? I just want to get him away. I want to go and live in the country with him. Or can we get another flat? He's got to be away from Ronnie. Well, we all know. They would join together. I mean, there's like one person. I didn't even look at them really as two people. I just looked at them as two bodies, but in one person, like looking in a mirror.
I wondered whether Maureen believed Reggie ever truly recognised the hold his twin brother had over both his life and his marriage.
Reggie understood this. He knew he could never get away. After 7 weeks of marriage, he knew that she was going to go, and that was all the influence of the brother. You've got to be here tonight. No, you can't take her to the cinema. We're going to look at a club. No. Oh, you're going to go with your silly wife. It's like a goading, a bit of chiding to wear him down. And in the end, he'd say, sit there, Frances, I've got to go out, and never came back for the night. And she was driven home. And that drove her absolutely crazy, being isolated. Reggie, he'd had everything. He could have anything. But he knew he'd always be under the influence of Ronnie Kray. Always.
Just 2 years after her wedding, Frances Kray had left Reggie and moved out of their flat to her parents' house for what would be the final time.
I heard Violet say, would it help if I went round there? And they said, Mum, don't go near the Shays. They don't like me. And she said, well, how can't they like you? You love her, you give her everything. She couldn't understand this wonderful, handsome, immaculately dressed son who'd made something of his life, other than a lot of people in the East End who had nothing. He's got clubs, he's got casinos, he's got snooker halls, he's mixing with all these people. They're in the newspaper. They were doing wonderful charity work and charity evenings, to which I went to several. Why wouldn't anybody like this wonderful son? But of course, Mr. and Mrs. Shea had heard some terrible stories, probably from their son, maybe from gossip. A very small community, the East End. And then she stayed round there. And then he went round and said that he was going to take her on holiday. And she said yes, she'd go. And he went and booked the tickets. And they were going to Ibiza. And she was all happy. She said, when they go on the holiday, they'll make it up and they'll be all right. A typical mum never wants you to have a row, an argument. I think that was a ruse. She knew she was never going to go on that holiday. She knew what she was going to do. And they never went on the holiday. I think she sent him to keep him away from her because she'd asked him for a divorce. And he said, well, what? He couldn't understand it, just like his mother couldn't understand. The only one who could understand it was Ronnie, who said, you know, look, in other words, good, get rid of her. Give her the divorce. But of course, he didn't want to. He really, really loved her.
For all the myths and notoriety that surrounded the Krays, it's easy to lose sight of the human tragedy at the heart of this story. In the end, it was Frances who paid the highest price.
She then went to live for the last week of her life round the corner at her brother's. I think maybe she didn't want to do what she had in mind to do in her parents' house, but she definitely had it in mind for her to move round there. And he went round there a couple of times trying to persuade her back, but she wouldn't. But he'd already booked these holiday tickets, and I think he really believed they were going. Everything would be right. And that's it. She just went to bed and took the tablets. And the brother, thinking that she was asleep, looked in and went out that morning. Who knows, she may not have been dead that early in the morning. And then when he came back, he noticed tea hadn't been touched that he'd put there, shook her, and she was dead.
Frances Kray died in 1967, only 23 years old, and was laid to rest at Chingford Mount Cemetery in East London.
What a sad, sad end for a lovely girl. But her family never forgave him. At the funeral was terrible. And later at the grave, when they met him up there taking flowers, they threw all the flowers away and called him murderer again. And I know that he was like a man possessed. Drunk every night, couldn't talk to anybody. The only person who could go near him was the mother. She's the only person that could talk to him at least sensibly without him flying into tantrums. But I don't think Ronnie Kray was too upset.
I wondered if Maureen thought Reggie ever blamed himself for Frances's death.
He's just lost his wife, who he did love, whatever the circumstances were, he did love her, which must have been a terrible thing that she actually took her own life. In other words, wanted to get away from him. She wasn't knocked down in the street or killed by somebody else. To take your own life means you want to get out of this life, the life she had with Reggie Kray, the controlled, Kray, possessive life. And this is what she did. And the third time she did it, she was successful, unfortunately, but she was free from that environment.
Frances's death by suicide marked a clear divide in Reggie's life, before and after.
He was just a different man, a weak man, a drunk. He drank bottles of gin, and I think that finished a lot of things in Reggie, because he had nothing then that was going to tell him that he could get away from Ronnie. He had nothing to say. He was going to have the nice house with the pretty wife and the little baby. He was never going to have these because he could never see him being with anybody else. He could never see that. So he now knew that his twin had won.
Frances Kray's story is often told through the lens of the Kray twins. But behind that story was a young woman navigating a world she could not yet fully see her place in. What remains is the memory of a life lived briefly in the glare of someone else's story and ended far too soon. Thanks for watching Maureen's insider account of Frances Kray's life. For more stories from Britain's underworld, make sure to like and subscribe and comment below what videos you'd like to see on the channel. We've also just launched memberships for anyone who'd like to support the channel and help us keep creating content. For more information, check out the description. This is Matt from Underworld Uncut. See you on the next one.